July 18th, 1943. Valguanera, Sicily. Heat rises from stone streets in waves thick enough to blur vision. Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Richter sits in what used to be a wine cellar, now serving as temporary German command post. The temperature underground reads 92 degrees Fahrenheit. Outside, it exceeds 105. Richter stares at casualty reports from 48 hours of fighting. 250 men captured. 180 to 240 killed or wounded. The numbers trouble him not because they are catastrophic, but because they make no sense. His intelligence assessments predicted the opposite outcome. The enemy was supposed to break easily. Richter picks up his pen. The nib scratches across paper as sweat drips onto the page, smearing ink. Casualties sustained against unidentified mountain troops, he writes. Tactical sophistication unexpected for unit with no combat record. Night infiltration capabilities suggest specialized training. He pauses. Looks at the names circled in field reports. 1st Canadian Infantry Division. The Canadians. The ones Berlin said would crumble under pressure. The untested division displacing British veterans. Richter underlines a phrase in his notes. They are called Mountain Boys. Behind German lines, 34 fresh graves mark where professional soldiers fell in 2 days. Wehrmacht veterans who survived Poland, France, and North Africa. Beaten by troops his commanders did not recognize. Richter sets down his pen. The report will travel up the chain of command to Field Marshal Albert Kesselring's staff in Rome. From there, copies will reach Berlin. And then, every German unit in the Mediterranean theater will read his assessment. He wonders if anyone will believe it. What happened next forced Germany to rewrite every intelligence assessment about Canadian forces for the remainder of the war. This is that story. 5 weeks earlier, May 25th, 1943. Southern England. Brigadier Marcus Thornton stands alone in a Nissen hut converted to operations planning. Rain hammers corrugated metal overhead. The sound drowns out voices from the next building where his staff officers argue about supply requisitions. Thornton ignores them. His attention fixes on the table before him, covered in maps. Not military maps, topographical surveys. Contour lines marking every rise and depression across Sicily's southern coast. He traces elevation markers with his index finger, calculating sight lines the way another man might count prayer beads. At 39, Thornton looks older. Stress carved lines around his eyes. 3 years commanding artillery batteries in England while watching Americans and British fight across North Africa. 3 years training men who ask when they will finally see action. 3 years being told his division is not ready. A knock interrupts his concentration. Come. His aide, Captain Morrison, enters with a telegram. Water drips from the man's service cap. Sir, from General McNaughton. Thornton takes the paper, reads it twice, sets it down carefully, as if handling something that might explode. We are going to Sicily. Morrison blinks. Sir? Operation Husky, 1st Canadian Infantry Division. We are in. My God, when? Embarkation begins June 10th, landing July 10th. Thornton looks back at his maps. 6 weeks to prepare for the largest amphibious operation in history. Morrison waits, expecting celebration. When none comes, he ventures, Sir, this is what we have been waiting for. Yes, what we have been waiting for. Thornton's voice carries no enthusiasm. British wanted their 3rd Infantry Division for this operation. Veteran troops with North Africa experience. Instead, they are getting us. 20,000 men who have never fought as a division. But we have trained. Training is not combat, Captain. Thornton cuts him off, not unkindly, but with the finality of someone who knows the difference. When we land in Sicily, everyone will be watching. British High Command, the Americans, Berlin. Everyone waiting to see if Canada can produce real soldiers or just well-drilled amateurs. He turns back to the maps. His finger traces the coastline near Pacino. Tell the staff officers I want complete terrain analysis by 0600 tomorrow. Elevation profiles, sight lines, dead ground analysis, everything. Morrison hesitates at the door. Sir, standard intelligence briefings will not include that level of topographical detail. Then we will create it ourselves. After Morrison leaves, Thornton pulls a leather notebook from his jacket. The cover is worn smooth from years of handling. He opens it to pages filled with calculations and sketches from another life. British Columbia, July 1938. Mountain slopes rising 10,000 feet from valley floors. Railway surveyors told the Canadian Pacific Railway that cutting a line through this terrain was impossible. Too steep, too unstable, too expensive. Marcus Thornton, civilian surveyor, age 34, spent 6 months proving them wrong. He remembers standing on a ridge with his transit and level, calculating grades that seemed suicidal on paper, but worked in practice. The trick was not fighting the mountain. It was understanding how the mountain worked, how water flowed, how rock fractured, how sight lines disappeared into dead zones where even God could not see you coming. He made his reputation on that survey, showed that impossible terrain just meant terrain that no one had properly calculated yet. Then 1939 arrived. Germany invaded Poland. Britain declared war. And Marcus Thornton, who spent his career measuring mountains, found himself measuring artillery trajectories instead. Different math, same principles. Or so he thought. Thornton closes the notebook. Outside, rain continues to hammer metal roofing. He stares at the Sicily maps and wonders if the Wehrmacht understands what mountains can do to an invasion force. He suspects they do. June 28, 1943. Mediterranean Sea. 20,000 Canadian soldiers sail in 2 convoys from British ports. Troop ships and freighters crowded with men, vehicles, artillery pieces, and enough ammunition to supply a month of sustained combat. Thornton travels aboard the headquarters ship, spending most of his time in the chart house, studying reconnaissance photographs of Sicily's coast. The topography troubles him. Flat coastal plains transition abruptly to foothills, then mountains. The Germans will trade the defenseless beaches for elevated positions where every ridge becomes a fortress. Standard artillery doctrine says, mass your guns and overwhelm the enemy with firepower. Thornton learned that doctrine, taught it, believes it. But his surveyor's eye sees problems the doctrine does not address. Artillery requires line of sight to the target. Mountains create dead zones. Valleys channel sound and smoke, giving away gun positions. Elevation changes affect trajectory calculations in ways that flat ground formulas cannot predict. He makes notes in the margins of his maps, calculates probable German defensive positions based purely on terrain advantages, circles ridgelines where machine guns could command approaches for miles. On July 4th, at 0340 hours, Thornton is asleep in his cabin when the first explosion rocks the ship. He is on deck in 30 seconds, still pulling on his jacket. The slower convoy, sailing 2 days behind his own, has been found by U-boats. 3 freighters burning on the horizon, flames bright enough to read by even at this distance. The convoy cannot stop. U-boats might still be tracking. Ships maintain course while men watch their comrades burn. By dawn, the freighters are gone. So are 58 soldiers, 500 vehicles, 40 artillery pieces, most of the division's headquarters equipment, and signal gear. Thornton will land in Sicily without his command vehicles. Without proper communications equipment, the convoy cannot wait for replacements. He stands at the rail, watching sunrise paint the water red and gold. Behind him, Morrison approaches hesitantly. "Sir, we have the final casualty list from the U-boat attack." Thornton does not turn around. "Tell me." 58 confirmed, including Major Whitmore's entire signals section. Now Thornton turns. The entire signals section. "Yes, sir, they were all on the same freighter." Thornton says nothing for 10 seconds. When he speaks, his voice is quiet and very cold. "So, we land with inadequate radios, no backup communications, and half my artillery pieces sitting on the ocean floor. Sir, tell the staff, every unit commander will carry message runners, old-fashioned, unreliable, but we have no choice." He looks back at the water. "We are going to war the way my grandfather did in 1917, on foot, with runners." Morrison leaves. Thornton remains at the rail as the sun climbs higher and the temperature rises. July 10th cannot come fast enough. And also comes too soon. July 10th, 1943. 0400 hours. Off Sicily's southern coast. 3,000 Allied ships crowd the waters in darkness. The largest amphibious armada ever assembled. Larger than what will hit Normandy a year later. Larger than anything in military history. Thornton stands on deck, watching men climb down cargo nets into landing craft. Each soldier carries 70 pounds of equipment, rifles, ammunition, packs, rations, entrenching tools, gas masks no one believes they will need, but regulations require anyway. The sea is rough. 4-foot swells pitch the landing craft violently as they pull away from the transport ships. Men grip the sides and fight seasickness. Some lose the fight. The smell of vomit mixes with salt spray and diesel exhaust. At 0530 hours, the naval bombardment begins. 16-inch shells from battleships, 8-inch rounds from cruisers. The horizon erupts in flame as hundreds of guns open fire simultaneously. The concussion rolls across the water in physical waves that Thornton can feel in his chest. He watches through binoculars as the coast disappears behind smoke and dust. Shellfire walks inland from the beaches in a carefully timed sequence. Counter-battery fire, targeting suspected Italian artillery positions. Then, suppression fire on beach defences. Then, the creeping barrage that will advance ahead of the infantry. It is, Thornton admits, an impressive display of firepower. It is also, his surveyor's instinct whispers, mostly hitting empty sand. At 0645 hours, the landing craft surged toward shore. Thornton is in the third wave. He cannot see the beach from his position, crouched below the gunwale. He can only hear the engines growl and feel the craft's motion through heavy surf. Around him, men are silent. No one speaks. Prayer happens internally. The ramp drops. Waist-deep water. Cold despite the Mediterranean summer. Thornton wades forward, boots finding purchase on gravel and sand. Around him, his staff struggles through surf with radios held above their heads. No machine gun fire, no mortar explosions, no artillery. The beach is empty. Thornton walks up the sand to where Italian coastal defense positions overlook the landing zone. Concrete bunkers with excellent fields of fire. Machine gun ports covering every approach. Barbed wire. Minefields, all abandoned. He finds the Italian garrison 400 yards inland, 130 men standing in formation with their hands raised. An Italian officer approaches with a white flag. "We surrender. We do not wish to die for Germans." By 0900 hours, the Royal Canadian Regiment secures Pacino Airfield. The runway is ploughed up, but otherwise intact. British engineers have it operational by noon. The first Allied fighters land on Sicilian soil, while Thornton is still processing 700 Italian prisoners who surrendered without serious resistance. That evening, Thornton sits in a commandeered farmhouse, reviewing the day's results. 75 casualties. Most from accidents, not enemy action. All Phase 1 objectives secured by noon. 700 prisoners. Coastal defences collapsed without a fight. His staff is jubilant. Young officers celebrating their first taste of combat with captured Italian wine. They believe this is what war looks like. Thornton knows better. He spreads his topographical maps across a wooden table. His finger traces the mountains rising 30 miles inland. The coastal plain transitions to foothills within 10 miles. Beyond that, serious mountains. 2,000 feet, 3,000, some peaks over 10,000. That is where the Germans are. Sir. Morrison enters with a situation report. General Montgomery's headquarters reports all British objectives secured. American landings at Gela encountered heavier resistance, but are proceeding. Overall casualties lighter than expected. Of course they are. Italians do not want to fight. but 60,000 German troops are withdrawing to defensive positions in the mountains right now. Thornton taps his map. This valley here, these ridgelines, perfect positions for defense. They gave us the coast because the coast means nothing. Morrison looks at the map, then at his commander. How do you know where they will defend? Because I surveyed mountains for 5 years. If I were German, this is where I would make my stand. He marks positions with a pencil. Machine guns here and here. Mortars on this reverse slope. Artillery observers on these peaks. They can see every approach for miles. Should we report this to division headquarters? Thornton considers. Report what? My guess based on topography? They want intelligence from reconnaissance, not theories from a surveyor. He rolls up his maps. Tomorrow we start moving inland. That is when we will learn if my guesses are correct. He walks outside into the Sicilian night. The sky is clear, stars bright without light pollution. Somewhere north, German soldiers are digging into mountain positions. Professional soldiers who know exactly what they are doing. Tomorrow, Thornton thinks, the real war begins. July 15th, 1943. Gramicele. The heat at midday exceeds 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Dust from marching columns hangs in the air, coating uniforms and filling lungs. Men wrap handkerchiefs over their faces, but it helps little. Water runs short. Wells are contaminated or dry. Streams that looked promising on maps are dusty beds. Thornton's division has advanced 60 miles in 5 days. Ragusa, Giarratana, Vizzini. Italian defenders surrendered in such numbers that Canadian soldiers spend more time processing prisoners than fighting. But the terrain is changing. Coastal plains gave way to foothills 3 days ago. Now the foothills are becoming mountains. Roads narrow. Switchbacks climb through valleys that amplify heat to unbearable levels. The vegetation changes from cultivated fields to scrub brush and rocky slopes. And ahead, the Germans wait. The column rounds a bend at 1420 hours. The lead platoon is advancing through an olive grove when the MG-42 opens fire. That sound, 1,200 rounds per minute, like ripping canvas, unmistakable. Men dive for cover. The machine gun traverses left to right, chopping through olive branches and kicking up dirt. Then mortars. 81mm rounds dropping with that distinctive whistle and crump. Air bursts designed to kill men in foxholes. The firefight lasts 40 minutes. When the Germans withdraw, they do so professionally. No panic, no surrender. Covering fire and tactical retreat to the next prepared position. 12 Canadians dead, 40 wounded. Thornton arrives at the site an hour later. Medics are still working. A young soldier, maybe 19, lies on a stretcher with his chest torn open. He dies while Thornton is standing there, just stops breathing. Medic does not even notice for 10 seconds. Thornton kneels, closes the boy's eyes, stands. Around him, officers wait for orders. That was not Italian militia, Thornton says. That was Wehrmacht. Professional soldiers who knew we were coming and prepared firing positions in advance. He looks at the terrain. They withdrew north to the next ridgeline. This valley funnels all approaches into a kill zone 3 kilometers ahead. Do we pursue? His second-in-command asks. Not directly. They want us to follow this road into their prepared positions. Thornton walks to his map case and spreads topographical charts across the hood of a jeep. His finger traces elevation contours. But this valley has a blind side. Here, the eastern ridge has dead ground where their observers cannot see. If we move at night, we can bypass their main position. His officers exchange glances. Night movement is difficult. Coordination nearly impossible without good communications. They still lack proper radios after the U-boat attack. But fighting uphill into German machine guns is suicide. We move at 2200 hours, Thornton says. Small units, silence discipline. If I am right about the dead ground, we will be in their rear by dawn. He is right. The maneuver succeeds. Canadians infiltrate around the German position using terrain Thornton identified from map study alone. At dawn, the Wehrmacht wakes to find enemy soldiers behind them. They withdraw again, grudgingly, to the next ridgeline. But it costs. Another 8 dead, 20 wounded. That night, Thornton sits alone in a captured German bunker. Italian wine bottles litter the floor. German maps are still pinned to the wall. He studies them, comparing German defensive planning to his own terrain analysis. They match, nearly perfectly. The Germans chose their positions using the same logic he would have used. Overlapping fields of fire, reverse slope positioning for artillery, dead ground eliminated through careful placement. This is going to be harder than anyone in London anticipated. July 16th, 1943, Piazza Armerina. The town sits atop a 720-metre summit, 22,000 people living in stone buildings along narrow medieval streets. The 2nd Canadian Brigade considers it a brief stop on the route to larger objectives. The Germans of the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division have other plans. Thornton watches the assault from an observation post 2 kilometres south. Through binoculars, he sees Canadian infantry advancing behind artillery barrage. The shells land in the town, sending up columns of smoke and dust. Then the barrage lifts, and the infantry pushes forward. Machine guns open fire from prepared positions. Canadians go to ground. The artillery cannot help. Urban terrain makes targeting impossible. Thornton is firing shells into a town where every building could hide Germans or civilians, or both. His forward observers cannot see through the smoke and dust to call effective fire. "Cease fire," he orders. "We are just wasting ammunition." The battle becomes house to house, room to room. Canadians clear one building and Germans fall back to another. It takes all day. By evening, Piazza Armerina is secured. German casualties are moderate. Canadian casualties are heavier than Thornton expected for a town that was not even supposed to be heavily defended. He walks through streets still smelling of cordite and burning wood. Walls are pockmarked with bullet impacts. Blood stains cobblestones. A Canadian soldier sits on a doorstep crying. Another smokes with hands that shake visibly. Thornton finds his artillery positions outside the town. The guns are silent now. Crews are cleaning barrels and restocking ammunition. He did not help them today. His guns fired thousands of rounds and achieved little. The terrain defeated him. That night, alone in a requisitioned villa, Thornton spreads his maps and surveys across a dining table. He stares at elevation contours and slope calculations until his eyes blur. The problem is not the guns. The problem is that he is thinking like an artillery officer. Mass your fires. Overwhelm the enemy. Standard doctrine. But mountains do not care about doctrine. He pulls out his old surveying notebook, flips to pages filled with calculations from 1938. Railway grades through British Columbia peaks, sightline analysis, dead ground identification. What if he stopped thinking about where to put artillery? What if he thought about where the enemy cannot put artillery? Mountains create blind spots. Valleys channel movement. Ridgelines block observation. If he can identify terrain that German observers cannot see, he can move troops without being targeted. It is basic surveying. Calculating what you can see from any given position. He did it hundreds of times mapping railway routes. Why not do it mapping approaches to German positions? Thornton begins making new marks on his maps, not artillery positions, observer positions. From this ridge, Germans can see these approaches. From that peak, they can spot movement in this valley. But here, this dead zone created by these two hills, nothing can observe it. If he is right, there is a route to the next objective that Germans cannot see. If he is wrong, men will die. He works until 0300 hours, calculating sight lines and elevation masks. When he finishes, he has a route marked that should be invisible to German observers. Should be. Tomorrow, he will find out. July 17th to 18th, 1943. Valguarniera. The approach is exactly as Thornton calculated, a valley obscured from German observation posts by the terrain's natural geometry. Canadian troops advance through it in darkness, navigating by compass and moonlight. The Germans do not see them coming. At dawn, Canadians are positioned on the flank of German defensive positions around Valguarniera, not where the Wehrmacht expected, not where their machine guns are sighted, not where their mortars are pre-registered. The attack succeeds through tactical surprise. Germans fight hard once contact is made. MG-42s tear into Canadian infantry with their devastating rate of fire. Mortars drop on Canadian positions with airbursts designed to kill men in the open. But the Canadians are not attacking uphill into prepared defences. They are attacking from the side, exploiting terrain that German planners thought was impassable. The battle lasts 2 days. By July 18th evening, Valguarniera is secured. German casualties are significant: 240 captured, 180 to 240 killed or wounded. Canadian casualties are 145, 40 dead, 105 wounded. Thornton stands in the town square as the sun sets, watching medics load wounded onto trucks. 40 families will receive telegrams. 105 more will receive letters saying their sons or husbands are wounded. But it could have been worse. Without the terrain analysis, they would have attacked frontally. Casualties would have doubled, maybe tripled. Morrison approaches with a captured German document. "Sir, intelligence found this in their command post. It is addressed to Field Marshal Kesselring's headquarters." Thornton takes the paper, reads it slowly. The report describes mountain troops with sophisticated fieldcraft who demonstrated unexpected tactical capability in the Valguarniera engagement. It notes Canadian use of terrain and night movement. It recommends that future defensive planning account for Canadian ability to exploit dead ground. The report's final line makes Thornton pause. These troops are called Mountain Boys and probably belong to 1st Canadian Division. Mountain Boys. Thornton hands the document back to Morrison. "Send this to Division Intelligence. They will want to see it." After Morrison leaves, Thornton walks to the edge of town where his artillery batteries are positioned. The crews are exhausted. They have been firing almost continuously for 48 hours. He finds Captain Daniel Cross of the Seaforth Highlanders writing in his journal by lantern light. "Still keeping your diary, Captain?" Cross looks up. "Sir, yes, sir. Someone should record what happens here." "What will you write about today?" Cross considers. "That we learned something. That terrain matters more than firepower. That the Germans are good, but we are learning to be better." He pauses. "And that 40 good men died proving it." Thornton nods slowly. "Write that. Write all of it. Because in 6 months, no one will remember how this battle was won. They will only remember that we won." He walks back toward his command post. Above, stars are appearing in a sky still hazy with dust and smoke. Somewhere north, Germans are preparing their next defensive position. Somewhere in Rome, Field Marshal Kesselring is reading casualty reports that do not make sense. And somewhere in a German command post, Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Richter is writing the first intelligence assessment that will change how the Wehrmacht views Canadian soldiers for the rest of the war. Thornton does not know about Richter yet, does not know that his terrain analysis and unconventional tactics are being studied by enemy intelligence, does not know that he has earned German respect at the cost of 40 lives. Tomorrow he will receive new orders: 2 peaks, 2 towns. One of them sitting above a 300-meter cliff face that everyone says is unclimbable. Tomorrow, Marcus Thornton will have to decide if his surveyor's calculations are worth more lives. Tonight, he allows himself to feel the weight of the 40 who are already gone. July 20th, 1943. Dawn. Brigadier Marcus Thornton spreads reconnaissance photographs across a folding table in what used to be a schoolhouse. The building still smells of chalk dust and children, though the children evacuated weeks ago. Now it serves as Canadian Divisional Headquarters. The photographs showed 2 towns, both perched on mountain peaks like medieval fortresses, both controlling the only routes north toward Adrano and the German defensive line anchoring Sicily's eastern flank. Leonforte sits astride Highway 121, 2,500 feet above sea level, 1,200 feet above the valley floor Canadian forces must cross to reach it. German defensive positions are visible in the photographs. Machine gun nests, mortar pits, artillery observers with perfect sightlines covering every approach. The second town is worse. Asoro crowns a peak that rises like a tooth from the surrounding ridgeline. The southern approach is open ground sloping upward for 2 kilometers. No cover, no concealment, just bare rock and scrub brush under German observation. Thornton has been staring at these photographs for 3 hours. His staff officers arrive at 0600 hours for the morning briefing. They file in quietly, sensing their commander's mood. Major Robert Sterling, Lieutenant Colonel Lysander Brennan, Captain Vincent Hayes, a dozen others whose names will matter before this day ends. Thornton does not look up when they enter. Gentlemen, Montgomery's orders are simple. Take Leonforte, take Asoro, drive east toward Adrano without restraint. Now he looks up. The Germans currently hold both objectives with elements of the 15th Panzergrenadier Division, professional troops who have been preparing these positions for 2 weeks. He points to the Leonforte photographs. 2nd Brigade will assault Leonforte. Conventional approach. Artillery bombardment, infantry advance, house to house if necessary. We expect heavy casualties, but the terrain offers no alternatives. His finger moves to Asoro. 1st Brigade will take Asoro. Sterling leans forward to study the photograph. Sir, that southern approach is a killing field. We will be under observation for the entire advance. 2 kilometers uphill with no cover. I am aware. Casualties could exceed 200 men. If we attack from the south, yes. The room goes quiet. Brennan speaks carefully. Sir, there is no other approach. The eastern and western faces are steep slopes, and the northern face is a 300-meter vertical cliff. Thornton pulls out another photograph, this one taken from a high-altitude reconnaissance flight. It shows Asoro's northern face, sheer rock rising from the valley like a wall, which is why the Germans are not defending it. Sterling stares at the photograph, then at his commanding officer. Sir, you cannot be suggesting. I am not suggesting anything yet. I am calculating. Thornton reaches into his map case and removes a leather notebook. The cover is worn smooth, pages are dog-eared and stained. Before the war, I surveyed mountains in British Columbia, railway routes through terrain that everyone said was impossible. He opens the notebook to sketches and calculations from 1938. This ridge in the Selkirk Range had a 72-degree slope, granite face, 350 meters vertical. The railway company said it could not be done. I calculated it could, and it was. Thornton sets the notebook beside the Asoro photograph. That cliff was steeper than this one. This is approximately 60 to 65 degrees, based on the shadow analysis and contour intervals. Difficult, dangerous, but not impossible. The room remains silent. Officers exchange glances. No one wants to be the first to object. Hayes speaks. He is 38, regiment commander, veteran of the First World War, though he was only 17 when it ended. Sir, with respect, a railway survey and a combat assault are different things. Your surveyors were not carrying rifles and ammunition. They were not maintaining silence discipline. They were not being shot at. All true, but the rock does not care about any of that. Either it is climbable or it is not. The math does not change because we are at war. Brennan, 42 years old and too old for this war, except that he volunteered anyway, folds his arms. Sir, even if the cliff is technically climbable, how do we get men up it at night without the Germans hearing? One dropped rifle, one loose rock, and every machine gun in Asoro opens fire on troops pinned against a vertical face. That is a valid concern, which is why we will need to calculate the exact route in advance. Identify handholds, mark the path, and move in absolute silence. Thornton looks at each officer in turn. The Germans gave us Valguanera because we used terrain they thought was impassable. They will give us Asoro for the same reason. Sterling shakes his head slowly. Sir, this is not dead ground we are infiltrating through. This is a cliff face. If you are wrong... If I am wrong, men die. I understand that, Major. Thornton's voice hardens. But if we attack from the south, men definitely die. 200 of them, maybe more. So the question is not whether my plan is risky, the question is whether it is less risky than the alternative. No one answers. Thornton rolls up his maps. I want complete topographical analysis of the northern approach by noon, slope calculations, rock composition if available, moonrise time for tonight and tomorrow night, temperature predictions, everything. Sir, Hayes stands.
Before we commit to this, someone should scout that cliff, confirm it is actually climbable.
Agreed. Who do you recommend? I will do it myself. Thornton looks at him for a long moment. You are a regiment commander. Reconnaissance is not your job. I will not ask men to climb something I have not seen personally. If that cliff is suicide, I need to know before we lose an entire company. The logic is sound. The courage is undeniable. Thornton knows he should refuse. Regiment commanders do not go on scouting missions. But Hayes is right. Someone needs to confirm the calculations before committing troops. Take your intelligence officer. Stay low. Observe from a distance if possible. Report back by 1400 hours. Hayes nods. Yes, sir. After the officers file out, Thornton sits alone with his photographs and his notebook. Through the window, he watches dawn light illuminate the mountains to the north. Somewhere up there, Germans are waking, eating breakfast,
Cleaning weapons. Confident that their positions are secure, they think the cliff is impassable. Thornton's entire career depends on them being wrong. 15 kilometers north, Asaro, German command post. Major Ernst Weber stands on the southern wall of the town, binoculars raised, scanning the valley below. At 41, he is young for his rank, but has earned it through 3 years of combat. Poland, France, Russia, now Sicily. Each campaign teaching him how to read terrain and predict where enemy forces will attack. The Canadians will come from the south, no other option. The eastern and western approaches are steep slopes covered by interlocking machine gun positions. The northern cliff is impassable. Weber has positioned his forces accordingly. 2 companies of Panzer Grenadiers dug into positions with perfect observation of the southern approach. MG-42 machine guns sighted to create overlapping kill zones. Mortars pre-registered on likely Canadian assembly areas. Anti-tank guns covering the road. When the Canadians attack, they will die in the open ground before reaching the town. Sir, Lieutenant Dietrich Vogel approaches. He is 28, junior officer, competent but still learning. Morning reconnaissance reports no Canadian movement yet. They are still consolidating around Valguanera. They will come today or tomorrow. Montgomery is pushing hard to reach Adrano. Weber lowers his binoculars. How are the men? Tired, hot, but ready. They understand the importance of holding this position. Weber nods. The 2 men stand in silence, looking south where dust columns mark Canadian positions 15 kilometers away. The heat is already building, though it is not yet 0800 hours. Sir, Vogel hesitates, the northern cliff. Should we post sentries there? Why? It is a vertical face. No one is climbing it. The Canadians have been unconventional. Valguanera was different. They used dead ground to flank us. Terrain analysis. But climbing a 300-meter cliff is not terrain analysis. It is suicide. Weber turns to face his junior officer. Vogel, I appreciate initiative, but we have limited men. I will not waste them watching an approach that does not exist. Vogel nods but does not look convinced. Weber softens his tone. Post 1 sentry on the north side, but our main positions stay focused south. That is where they will come. After Vogel leaves, Weber returns to studying the valley. The Canadians performed better than expected at Valguanera. Intelligence reports said they were untested, that they would break under pressure. Instead, they fought well, used terrain cleverly, showed discipline under fire. But clever tactics and rock climbing are not the same thing. Weber is certain the attack will come from the south. He has prepared accordingly. When it comes, he will be ready. July 20th, 1943, 1100 hours. Captain Vincent Hayes and his intelligence officer, Lieutenant Patterson, move through olive groves on the northern edge of the valley below Asoro. They are in daylight. Hayes insisted. Night reconnaissance would prevent proper observation of the cliff face. They stay low, use available cover, move slowly to avoid attracting attention. The cliff rises before them, 300 meters of limestone face, grey-brown in the late morning sun. Hayes studies it through binoculars, tracing potential routes, looking for ledges, natural handholds, cracks that could provide purchase. It is, he admits to himself, not as vertical as he feared. Sections approach true vertical, yes, but others are perhaps 65 degrees, steep enough to require climbing, but not technically impossible. Patterson whispers, "Sir, I think it could be done. That route there, following the natural crack line. It would be difficult, but... Quiet, let me think." Hayes continues his observation. He served in the last war, saw good men die because commanders made confident decisions based on incomplete information. He will not be that commander. The cliff is climbable, he is increasingly certain, but it would require perfect conditions. Darkness to conceal the climb, silence to avoid detection, and luck, always luck. He lowers his binoculars, begins to crawl backward through the olive trees. Patterson follows. They are 50 meters from the tree line when the 88mm anti-tank gun opens fire. Hayes does not hear the shell coming. No one ever does at that velocity. The gun is 3 kilometers away on the southern edge of Asoro. The German crew spotted movement in the olive grove, saw something that did not belong, trained their gun and fired. The shell arrives before the sound of the gun. Hayes and Patterson die instantly. The high-explosive round detonates on impact. The concussion is visible from the Canadian positions as a momentary flash and a rising cloud of dust and smoke. Thornton is in his command post when the runner arrives. "Sir, forward observation post reports explosion in the valley north of our position. Coordinates match Captain Hayes's reconnaissance route." Thornton sets down the map he was studying. "Send a recovery team, now." "Sir, the area is under German observation." "I said now." The runner leaves. Thornton sits motionless for 30 seconds. Then he stands, walks to the window, stares north toward mountains he cannot see from this position. Hayes volunteered. Hayes insisted on going personally. Hayes said he needed to see the cliff before asking men to climb it. And now Hayes is dead because Thornton needed someone to confirm his calculations. The recovery team returns at 13:30 hours. They bring dog tags, nothing else. The explosion did not leave remains that could be recovered with German guns watching. Thornton receives the tags from Brennan, who led the recovery team personally. 2 sets of metal discs on ball chains. Names, service numbers, blood type, religion. "I am sorry, sir." Brennan's voice is rough. They never had a chance. Thornton closes his fist around the tags. "Assemble the officers. 1,400 hours." "Sir, 1,400 hours, Colonel. That is an order." Brennan leaves. Thornton sits alone in the command post with 2 sets of dog tags in his hand. Through the window, he can see soldiers moving between buildings, trucks bringing up supplies, artillery crews cleaning their guns, men going about the business of war while Hayes and Patterson are dead because of mathematics. A surveyor's mathematics. Thornton opens his notebook to the Asoro calculations, slope angles, climbing routes, probability assessments. He stares at numbers that made sense this morning, but now feel like murder weapons. Did I kill them? The numbers do not answer. Numbers never do. They are neutral, pure, indifferent to consequences. But men are not numbers. Hayes had a wife. Patterson had a mother waiting in Ontario. They are not calculations to be written in notebooks. They are dead because Thornton decided mathematics were more important than lives. He looks at the clock. 13:45 hours. 15 minutes until the briefing. 15 minutes to decide if his theory about the cliff is worth more deaths. Outside, the temperature climbs toward 105 degrees. Men seek shade and drink their water rations. Artillery pieces bake in the sun. The war continues around Thornton while he sits with dog tags and doubt. At 1400 hours exactly, he walks into the briefing room. Every officer of 1st Brigade is present. Sterling, Brennan, company commanders, platoon leaders. They stand when Thornton enters. He waves them back to their seats. Captain Hayes and Lieutenant Patterson were killed at 11:15 hours, conducting reconnaissance of the Asoro northern approach.
German anti-tank gun. Direct hit. His voice is flat, professional.
They died confirming what my calculations suggested. The cliff is climbable. He places Hayes' dog tags on the table. Major Sterling, you will assume command of Captain Hayes' regiment. You will lead the assault on Asoro's northern face. Climbing will begin at 2200 hours tomorrow, July 21st. Approach route is marked on these maps. Questions? Sterling stares at him. Sir, with respect, Hayes died scouting this approach. Does that not suggest it is too dangerous? Hayes died in daylight under German observation. The climb will be at night, with the Germans looking south for our main assault on Leon Fort. Different circumstances. But sir, Major Sterling, Thornton's voice is cold. Hayes died proving the approach is viable. The Germans saw him. They now know we are interested in that cliff, which means they might reinforce it if we delay. We go tomorrow night. Those are Montgomery's orders and mine.
The room is silent. Officers avoid eye contact. No one wants to be next to question this plan that has already cost 2 lives. Brennan finally speaks. Sir, my men will need training. Cliff climbing is not standard infantry work. You have 30 hours. Train them. And Colonel, Thornton looks directly at Brennan. They must understand silence discipline is absolute. One sound and everyone on that cliff dies. Yes, sir. Dismissed. The officers file out. Only Sterling remains. He approaches the table, looks at Hayes' dog tags, then at Thornton. Sir, you know Hayes had a family, wife, 2 children. I am aware. And you are sending more men to do what he died attempting. I am sending men to succeed where Hayes was killed by bad luck and German artillery. There is a difference. Sterling's jaw tightens. Is there, sir? Because from where I stand, it looks like you are risking an entire regiment on mathematics. Thornton meets his eyes. Major, you are correct. I am betting men's lives on my calculations. If I am wrong, you will all die. If I am right, we take Asoro with minimal casualties and open the route to Adrano. He picks up Hayes' dog tags. Hayes volunteered knowing the risks. Now I am asking you to finish what he started. Are you capable of that? I will lead the climb. But if we fail, it is my responsibility, not yours. You follow orders. I give them. The weight belongs to me. Sterling nods slowly. Then with your permission, sir, I should begin training my men. Go. After Sterling leaves, Thornton sits alone with the dog tags and his maps. He pulls out the leather notebook, flips to calculations from 1938, railway surveys through British Columbia. Climbs he calculated were possible and then proved correct. But no one died if those calculations were wrong. The worst consequence was wasted time and money. Here, wrong calculations mean dead soldiers, men with families, men who trusted him. He closes the notebook, opens it again, studies the numbers, closes it. Math does not lie, but math does not care either. July 20th, 1943, 1800 hours. Training ground south of Valguanera. Brennan has found a hillside with a 30-meter vertical section of limestone, not as tall as Asoro's cliff, not even close, but enough to teach basic technique. Soldiers gather in the evening heat, young men, most under 25. They enlisted to fight Germans, not to become mountain climbers. Brennan stands before them. Tomorrow night, we are going to climb 300 meters of cliff face in darkness, in silence, carrying rifles, ammunition, and water. If anyone makes a sound, German machine guns will kill everyone on that cliff. Questions? A soldier raises his hand. Sir, what if we cannot do it? Then you die trying, because the alternative is attacking a sorrow from the south where you will definitely die. Brennan points at the hillside. That 30-meter face represents 10% of what you will climb tomorrow. Start climbing. Learn what your hands can grip. Learn to move without making sound.
You have until dark. The soldiers begin climbing. Most struggle. Some fall within meters and have to start again. They are infantry, not mountaineers. But they learn. Slowly. Painfully. By the time darkness falls, most can navigate the 30-meter face without falling. Most. Not all. Brennan watches them in the fading light. He is 42, old enough to be father to half these soldiers. He has a son at home, 16 years old. Too young for this war, thank God. If Brennan dies tomorrow night, his son will be alone. His wife died 7 years ago in childbirth. The baby died too, just Brennan and his boy. He promised his wife he would come home, promised his son the same thing. Tomorrow night, he will climb 300 meters of cliff face because a general who used to survey mountains thinks math says it is possible. Sterling approaches. Colonel, the men are exhausted. Good. Tomorrow they will be more exhausted. Better they learn their limits now.
Do you think we can actually do this?
Brennan does not answer immediately. He watches a young soldier halfway up the cliff face, hands searching for purchase, legs trembling with effort. I think General Thornton believes we can, and I think he is staking his career on being right. Brennan turns to Sterling. But beliefs do not climb cliffs. Men do. And these men are brave, but they are not experienced climbers. Then what do we tell them? That Hayes died proving it is possible, that we go because there is no other option, that silence means survival. Brennan looks back at the cliff, and that if we succeed, we will do something the Germans think is impossible. That has value, making the enemy doubt their own assessments. Sterling nods. They stand together watching soldiers climb in darkness, falling and climbing again, learning through repetition what cannot be taught through lecture. Tomorrow night, these men will climb 10 times higher, in absolute silence, with Germans sleeping meters away. Tomorrow night, Thornton's mathematics become reality or death. July 21st, 1943, 0600 hours. Thornton's command post. He has not slept. The dog tags sit on his desk. Hayes, Patterson, 2 men dead because he needed his calculations confirmed. Now he will risk 200 more. There is a letter on his desk, half written, addressed to Hayes's widow. Mrs. Hayes, your husband died conducting reconnaissance vital to our operations. His courage and professionalism exemplify the highest traditions of the service. He volunteered for a dangerous mission, knowing the risks. Thornton crosses out the last sentence, tries again. He died following my orders. Orders based on my theory that a cliff the Germans consider impassable could be climbed. If that theory is wrong, your husband died for nothing. He crosses that out too. There is no version of this letter that makes Hayes' death acceptable. No combination of words that transforms mathematics into meaning. He leaves the letter unfinished, walks outside into early morning heat, already approaching 90 degrees. Sterling is drilling his men. 200 soldiers learning movement discipline, how to climb silently, how to carry equipment without rattling. Basic skills they should have learned weeks ago, but no one anticipated climbing cliffs in Sicily. Thornton watches from a distance, does not interrupt. These men need to trust their commander, not the general who ordered this operation. Brennan approaches. Sir, the men are as ready as they will be in the time available. That will have to be sufficient. Sir, Brennan's voice is careful. Some of the men are asking questions, about Hayes, about whether this climb is necessary. What are you telling them? That orders are orders, that we have a job to do. But sir, Brennan pauses, they trust you. They need to know you are certain this will work. Thornton looks at him. I am certain the mathematics are correct. I am certain the cliff is climbable. I am certain the Germans are not expecting this approach. He turns back to watch Sterling's training. But I am not certain 200 men can climb 300 meters in darkness without making a single mistake. Because mathematics cannot account for human error. Then why are we doing this? Because the alternative is worse. Because frontal assault on a Soro means 200 men definitely die. This way, maybe they do not. Brennan nods slowly. Maybe is not a strong word, sir. No, but it is the best I can offer. At 1200 hours, Thornton briefs Sterling on the final plan. Maps spread across a table showing approach routes, climbing sequence, timing calculations. You depart at 2100 hours. 1 hour to reach the base of the cliff. Climbing begins at 2200 hours. I calculate 40 minutes to reach the summit if the pace is steady. That puts you on top at 2240 hours. You establish defensive positions and wait for dawn. When the Germans wake, they will find you above them.
Sterling studies the map. And if we are discovered during the climb, you will be pinned against a vertical face with nowhere to go. German machine guns will kill everyone. Thornton does not soften it. That is why silence is absolute. One dropped rifle, one loose rock, one man who coughs, everyone dies. Understood, sir. Major. Thornton's voice changes, becomes less formal. Hayes would have led this climb if he had survived. You are finishing what he started. That means something. Does it, sir? Or are we just following a dead man's mistake? It was not a mistake. Hayes confirmed the cliff is climbable. He died because of German artillery, not because of the plan. Sterling meets his eyes. You really believe that, sir? I have to. Because if Hayes died proving me wrong, then sending you makes me a murderer, and I am not ready to accept that assessment. At 1800 hours, Thornton writes another letter, this one to his wife. They married late, no children yet. She remains in England, working as a surveyor for the government. She understands mathematics and terrain analysis. She would understand this plan. Margaret, I have ordered men to climb a mountain because mathematics say it is possible. 2 men died confirming my calculations. Tonight, 200 more will risk their lives proving those calculations correct. You know how surveying works, how we calculate grades and slopes and declare something possible when everyone else says impossible. I am applying those principles to war, using civilian expertise for military purpose. But surveying mistakes mean wasted time. Military mistakes mean dead soldiers. If this works, I will have validated a new approach to mountain warfare. If it fails, I will have killed good men with mathematical arrogance. I will write again when I know which. He does not mail the letter, keeps it in his notebook, a confession that will only matter if the climb succeeds. At 2000 hours, Sterling's men assemble, 200 soldiers, each carrying rifle, ammunition, water. Nothing else. No packs, no extra equipment. Weight is enemy on a cliff face. Thornton addresses them briefly. Gentlemen, tonight you will attempt something the Germans believe impossible. Captain Hayes died confirming this approach is viable. You will succeed where he was prevented from succeeding. Silence is survival. Discipline is life. And when the sun rises tomorrow, you will be above the enemy, looking down. Questions? No one speaks. Then trust your training, trust Major Sterling, and trust that mathematics do not lie. The soldiers move out at 2100 hours. Thornton watches them disappear into darkness. 200 men walking toward a cliff that has already killed 2. Brennan stands beside him. Sir, what do we do now? We wait, and we watch, and we pray that I am not wrong. The 2 men return to the command post. Thornton positions himself where he can see the northern mountains through binoculars. He cannot see the cliff from this position, cannot see if the men are climbing or falling or dying. He can only wait. The clock reads 21:30 hours. The climb will begin in 30 minutes. Thornton's entire career, his reputation, his theory that surveyor mathematics can win wars, all of it depends on the next 8 hours. If the cliff proves unclimbable, he is responsible for every death. If Sterling's men make even one sound, German machine guns will slaughter them against the rock face. If the Germans happen to reinforce the northern approach after seeing Hayes's reconnaissance, the plan fails before it begins. If. Mathematics eliminates some ifs, calculate probabilities, reduce uncertainty. But mathematics cannot account for every variable, cannot predict every human error, cannot guarantee success. Thornton sets down his binoculars, picks up Hayes's dog tags,
Holds them in his palm while he stares at mountains he cannot see.
Somewhere out there, 200 men are beginning to climb, and he can do nothing but wait to learn if his calculations were genius or murder. July 21st, 1943, 22:30 hours. Sterling's hands search rock he cannot fully see. His fingers find a crack. Test it. The limestone holds his weight. He pulls himself up 1 meter, finds the next hold, climbs. The cliff face rises 300 meters above the valley floor. In daylight, he traced this route through binoculars, identified ledges, natural handholds. The path Hayes died confirming existed. Now, in darkness broken only by three-quarter moonlight, Sterling climbs by feel and faith. Behind him, 199 men follow, single file, each climbing where the one before climbed, following a route they cannot see toward a summit they must reach in silence. The rock radiates heat stored from Sicilian sun that baked it to 120 degrees. Sterling's palms sweat.
He wipes them on his trousers, continues upward, 1 hand hold, 1 foot hold, repeat. His rifle hangs across his back, 20 pounds of dead weight throwing off his balance. Ammunition pouches pull at his belt. Canteen slaps his hip with each movement. Every piece of equipment wants to make noise, wants to betray them. But the discipline holds. No one speaks. No one needs to. They all understand what sound means. At 2,238 hours, 20 meters below Sterling, a young private from Saskatchewan dislodges a rock the size of a man's fist. It falls, bounces once against the cliff face. The crack echoes like a rifle shot in the night silence. Every climber freezes. The rock tumbles downward, hitting outcrops, each impact impossibly loud, finally landing in scree at the cliff base with a clatter that seems to echo across Sicily. Sterling does not breathe. 199 men do not breathe. 300 meters above them, German sentries hear the sound. Was ist das?
A pause.
Vielleicht ein Tier, Ziegen.
Ziegen klettern nicht nachts. The sentries listen. 30 seconds of silence. Then they resume their conversation about cigarettes and women and home. Sterling exhales. So quietly the man 5 meters below him cannot hear it. He begins climbing again. His heart hammers against his ribs, but he climbs. Behind him, the column continues. 1 man, then another, then another. A chain of soldiers moving up impossible stone in impossible silence. They are farm boys from Ontario, clerks from Montreal, students from Vancouver, none trained for this, none prepared for this, but they climb anyway, because the alternative is dying in open ground while German machine guns cut them down, because their general calculated this was possible, because Hayes confirmed it with his life. They climb.
3 kilometers north, Assoro.
Major Ernst Weber cannot sleep. He lies in his quarters staring at ceiling beams. Outside, sentries walk their posts. MG-42 crews man defensive positions. Everything is ready for tomorrow's attack. The Canadians will come from the south. Standard doctrine. Artillery preparation followed by infantry assault. Weber has positioned his forces to meet that threat. But something nags at him. He thinks about Valguarnera, how the Canadians used dead ground to flank prepared positions, how they moved at night when conventional wisdom said night operations were too complex for inexperienced troops. These Canadians are not conventional. Weber rises, pulls on his tunic, walks outside into night air that still holds afternoon's heat. Lieutenant Dietrich Vogel stands at the southern observation post, scanning the valley with binoculars. "Anything?" Weber asks. "No movement, sir. They are still at Valguarnera, probably planning tomorrow's assault." Weber nods, takes the binoculars, scans the valley himself, though darkness reveals nothing. "The northern cliff," he says. "The sentry is posted?" "Yes, sir. 1 man, as you ordered." "Good." Weber lowers the binoculars, looks at Vogel. "You think I am being paranoid, worried about a cliff no one can climb?" "Sir, I think you are being thorough, which is why we have held every position the Canadians attacked. Except Valguarnera, Weber thinks. They took Valguarnera because I underestimated their tactical creativity. He hands the binoculars back to Vogel. Wake me if anything changes, anything at all. Yes, sir. Weber returns to his quarters, lies down, stares at the ceiling. Sleep does not come. Below his position, 300 meters down a cliff face, he dismissed as impassable. Canadian soldiers climb through darkness.
Midnight, July 22nd, 1943. Sterling's arms burn. His legs tremble. He has been climbing for 90 minutes without rest. Hands bleeding where rock tears skin. Sweat stings the cuts. He does not stop. Cannot stop. Behind him, 200 men depend on his route finding. If he chooses wrong, if he leads them to impassable stone, they will be trapped on a vertical face when dawn comes. At 0:15 hours, his hand reaches up and finds the route narrowing. A bottleneck where the natural crack they have been following pinches to inches wide. Sterling tests the rock to the left, solid but no handholds. To the right, a small ledge, maybe. He shifts his weight, reaches for the ledge. His fingers find purchase. He pulls, the ledge holds. He traverses right, away from the crack line, following this new route. Behind him, men follow blindly, trusting his choices, trusting that a surveyor general calculated correctly and their major is finding the path. At 0032 hours, a soldier loses his grip. He does not fall, his hands slip, but his feet hold. For 3 seconds, he dangles by his boots, wedged in a crack. Then he finds new handholds, pulls himself up. No one helps him. No one can. On a cliff face, each man climbs alone. But every climber knows what almost happened, knows that death is one mistake away. The discipline tightens. Movements become more careful, more controlled. Each handhold tested twice, each foothold verified. They climb slower now, but safer. At 00:55 hours, Sterling's hand reaches up and finds flat ground instead of vertical rock, the summit. He pulls himself over the edge, lies flat on stone still warm from daylight. His entire body shakes from 95 minutes of sustained climbing. He wants to rest, sleep, never move again. Instead, he crawls forward, away from the edge, into shadows cast by stunted olive trees growing in rocky soil. Behind him, soldiers arrive one by one. They spread out silently, each finding position, each checking his rifle, each preparing for what comes at dawn. Colonel Lysander Brennan arrives at 0108 hours. As rearguard, he has been climbing with constant fear that someone ahead would fall, that he would watch men plummet past him, unable to help. But everyone made it. He counts heads in darkness, 200 soldiers, all present. Brennan crawls to where Sterling lies in shadows, leans close, whispers so softly the words are barely breath. All accounted for. Sterling nods. His hands still shake from exhaustion. They are 300 meters from a sorrow, close enough to hear German sentries talking, close enough to smell cooking fires from evening meals, close enough to see individual buildings in moonlight, close enough to be killed if discovered. Sterling checks his watch. 0110 hours. 4 hours and 20 minutes until dawn. 4 hours and 20 minutes to wait in absolute silence while Germans sleep 300 meters away. He positions his men carefully, hand signals only, Bren guns sighted to cover approaches, rifles pointed toward town, fields of fire identified and marked. Then they wait. The Germans sleep, the Canadians watch, and the night crawls toward dawn while 200 men who climbed impossible distance prepare for impossible morning. 0345 hours. German positions. Weber wakes to silence. Something is wrong. He knows it before he understands why. Some instinct developed through 3 years of combat screaming at him. He rises, walks outside. The night is quiet. Too quiet. The southern sentry posts report nothing. No movement in the valley, no sounds of preparation. The Canadians are not coming tonight. But the feeling persists. Weber walks to the northern edge of town. The single sentry posted there stands at his post, looking north toward the cliff. "Anything unusual?" Weber asks. "No, sir, quiet night." Weber looks at the cliff. Moonlight illuminates the rock face. 300 meters of limestone rising from the valley. Impassable, except. Weber raises his binoculars, scans the ridgeline above the cliff, sees nothing, just rock and scrub brush and shadows. But the feeling will not leave. "Double the sentries here," he orders. 2 men, both watching north. "Sir, for the cliff?" "Yes, for the cliff."
The sentry does not argue.
"I will get someone, sir." Weber continues to scan the ridgeline, seeing nothing, feeling everything. He lowers the binoculars, checks his watch. 0352 hours. Dawn in 90 minutes. If the Canadians are going to attack, it will come with first light. He walks back toward his command post, planning to wake his officers, ensure everyone is ready. He does not look at the ridgeline again, does not see 200 Canadian soldiers lying motionless in shadows 150 meters from where he stands.
0530 hours. July 22nd. First light. The sky changes from black to grey. Colour bleeds back into the world. Details emerge from darkness. Sterling watches the transformation lying flat on Sicilian stone. Around him, his men remain motionless. They have been in position for 4 hours. Cramped, cold despite lingering heat, thirsty, exhausted, but silent. In Asaro, German sentries change shifts. Tired men relieved by fresh ones. Morning routine. Coffee brewing. The smell drifts across the distance. The new sentries face south. Scanning the valley for Canadian forces everyone knows must attack eventually. They do not look north. At 0532 hours, a German soldier walks to the northern wall to urinate. He faces away from the cliff, does his business, turns to return to his position, and sees men on the ridge, men with rifles, men wearing Canadian uniforms, men who should not exist. His mouth opens to shout. Sterling shoots him. The crack of the rifle shatters dawn quiet. For 1 second, nothing happens. Germans freeze. Canadians freeze. The world holds its breath. Then, 200 Canadian rifles open fire. The advantage is total. Sterling's men fire from elevated positions with clear sightlines to every German position in Asoro. Germans scramble for cover, try to return fire uphill, cannot get effective angles. Canadian bullets rain down on German positions like judgment from heaven. In his command post, Weber hears the firing, runs outside, looks north, and understands instantly. The Canadians climb the cliff. His professional military mind processes this in seconds. They infiltrated using terrain he failed to defend. They achieved total surprise. They hold superior ground. The battle is lost before it truly begins. But Weber is a professional. Professionals do not surrender when surprised. They fight. "Counterattack," he shouts. "Retake the summit, now!" German soldiers rush from buildings, form assault groups, begin advancing uphill toward Canadian positions. Sterling watches them come. "Steady," he tells his men. "Pick your targets. Make every shot count." The Germans advance with courage, professional soldiers executing their orders. But they are attacking uphill into prepared defenses, exposing themselves with each step, while Canadians fire from cover. The first assault wave collapses in 15 minutes. 20 Germans dead, 30 wounded. Nothing gained. Weber orders second assault. Same result. At 0610 hours, Sterling keys his radio. First communication with Thornton since the climb began. "Mongoose 6. This is Mongoose Actual. Summit secured. Request fire mission. Send it." 5 kilometers south. Thornton's command post. The forward observer receives Sterling's transmission at 0611 hours. Runs to Thornton's position. "Sir, Major Sterling reports summit secured. They made it. They are requesting fire support." Thornton closes his eyes, opens them. 5 hours of waiting crystallizing into this moment. They climbed the cliff. Mathematics were correct. Men succeeded where calculations said they could. Hayes died for this. 17 more will die before morning ends. But the plan worked. "Artillery," Thornton says. His voice is steady, professional. Fire for effect. All batteries. Target coordinates as briefed. 150 guns open fire. Thornton calculated these trajectories 3 days ago, identified every German position through topographical analysis, pre-registered coordinates based on terrain study. Now, his surveyor's eye translates into devastating accuracy. Shells land in German mortar pits, on machine gun positions,
in assembly areas where Weber is organizing his third counterattack. The bombardment is surgical, precise, perfect. Thornton stands outside his command post, listening to his guns fire. 150 pieces, throwing steel at German positions 5 kilometers away. The sound rolls across hills like sustained thunder. Brennan approaches. "Sir, 2nd Brigade is moving on Leon Forte, and I have casualty reports from Asoro." "Tell me." 17 killed during the climb and initial engagement, 45 wounded, German losses significantly higher. 17 dead. Expected casualties for frontal assault, 200 minimum. The mathematics saved 183 lives. But Hayes is still dead, so are 17 others. Mathematics do not care about individual names, only aggregate numbers. "Prepare my vehicle," Thornton says. "I'm going to Asoro." 08:30 hours. Asoro surrenders. Weber stands in the town square, watching his men lay down weapons. 240 prisoners, 160 dead. The position lost. He does not feel anger, he feels respect. The Canadians did something remarkable, something Weber declared impossible. They climbed 300 meters in darkness and achieved total tactical surprise. Sterling walks toward him, young, exhausted, blood on his hands from the climb. "Major Sterling, 1st Canadian Division," he says. "Major Weber, 15th Panzergrenadier Division." Weber gestures at the cliff. "You climbed that, at night." "We did." "Masterful." Weber shakes his head slowly. "We did not think it possible." "Our general believed it was. He was a surveyor before the war. He sees terrain differently." "A surveyor?" Weber looks at the cliff again. 300 meters of rock he dismissed as impassable. "A civilian surveyor defeated a Wehrmacht major. That is something for history books." Sterling says nothing. Around them, German prisoners are being marched away. Canadian soldiers occupy positions bought with 17 lives. "Your general," Weber says. "Give him my compliments. Tell him he taught me something today. Never assume terrain is impassable. Someone will find a way through." 09:30 hours. Thornton arrives in Asoro. The town is secured. Sterling's men occupy German positions. Medics treat wounded. Prisoners sit under guard. Sterling salutes as Thornton approaches. "Sir, Asoro is ours. Casualties, 17 killed, 45 wounded. German losses, 240 captured, 160 killed." Thornton returns the salute, then extends his hand. Sterling shakes it. "You did something remarkable, Major. You and your men achieved what the enemy considered impossible." "Your calculations made it possible, sir. The route, the timing, the moonlight, all correct." They walk to the northern edge, where Canadian positions overlook the cliff. In daylight, it appears even more formidable. 300 meters of rock that should have killed anyone who attempted it. But 200 men climbed it, and lived. Thornton stares at the cliff face for long minutes, seeing the route his calculations identified, seeing where Sterling's men pulled themselves up through darkness. Mathematics were correct. But mathematics did not climb this cliff. Men climbed it. Brave men, scared men, men who trusted their commanders and their own courage. "Hayes died confirming this was possible," Thornton says quietly. "You finished what he started." "Yes, sir." Sterling pauses. "The German commander, Weber, he asked me to give you his compliments. Said you taught him something about terrain." Thornton nods slowly. "The price of that lesson was 17 Canadian lives and 160 German lives. That is expensive education." They stand together in silence. Around them,
Soldiers move through the town. War continues. But for this moment, two men acknowledge the weight of what happened here. "Sir," Sterling finally says, "what you did, applying civilian surveyor skills to military problems, it is going to change warfare." "Perhaps." Thornton looks at Sterling. "Or perhaps we just got lucky."
The cliff could have been unclimbable. Hayes could have survived his reconnaissance. 1,000 things could have gone differently. But they did not. You calculated correctly. We climbed successfully. That is what matters. Thornton does not answer. He thinks of Hayes, of the 17, of the calculations that saved 183 but could not save everyone. Mathematics do not feel guilt, but generals do.
July 22nd,
1943. Leonforte. While Asaro fell through innovation and surprise, Leonforte dies through conventional doctrine. 2nd Brigade attacks with artillery bombardment and infantry advance. The approach is textbook, standard Allied tactics applied to mountain warfare. The result is brutal. German defenders turn every building into a fortress. Every street becomes a killing ground. Canadian soldiers clear rooms with grenades and close quarters combat. The battle lasts 18 hours, house to house, through day and night, Germans withdrawing from one position only to fight from another, Canadians advancing meter by meter through medieval streets. By evening, July 22nd, Leonforte falls. Casualties: 53 killed, 120 wounded, 3 times Asaro's cost for the same strategic result. That night, Thornton studies casualty reports from both battles. The contrast is undeniable. Innovation saved lives. Doctrine spent them.
Asaro succeeded because he thought like a surveyor. Leonforte paid the price of conventional thinking. The lesson should be clear. But lessons written in blood are easily forgotten in the pressure of continuing operations. July 23rd to 28th, 1943. Aguirre. The road to Aguirre opens. 11 kilometers of mountainous terrain, another German defensive position, another battle to fight. Thornton stares at reconnaissance photographs, plans his assault. 150 guns will create a creeping barrage. Infantry will advance behind the shells. Classic doctrine. Mass firepower overwhelming the enemy. Brennan objects during the planning conference. "Sir, the terrain between here and Aguirre is thick with vineyards and orchards. Infantry will fall behind the timed barrage. My artillery will clear the approach." "Sir, with respect, terrain cannot be cleared by artillery alone. We need to account for—" "Colonel!" Thornton's voice is cold. "I appreciate your concern, but I am an artillery officer. This is what artillery does. We overwhelm defenses with firepower." Brennan says nothing more, but his expression shows doubt. The attack launches July 23rd at 0600 hours. The barrage is spectacular. 150 guns firing in perfect sequence. Shells walking across 11 kilometers toward Aguirre. Smoke and dust obscuring everything. But Brennan was right. Vineyards and orchards, slow infantry movement. Soldiers fall behind the timed barrage. Gaps open. When the artillery lifts, Germans emerge from positions the bombardment missed. Machine guns open fire on Canadian infantry, caught in open ground without support. The attack fails. 32 men dead, 60 wounded. No ground gained. Thornton stares at casualty reports. Orders second attack, same plan, same result. Orders third attack, same result. By July 25th, Canadian casualties exceed 100. Aguirre remains in German hands. Soldiers whisper that their general has lost his touch. The brilliant tactician who took Asaro with 17 casualties has spent 100 trying to take Aguirre with conventional doctrine. That night, Thornton sits alone with his maps and his surveying notebook. He stares at calculations from 1938, railway surveys through British Columbia, the civilian expertise that made Asaro possible, and he understands his mistake. Asaro succeeded because he thought like a surveyor.
identified unconventional approach, applied mathematics to terrain. Aguirre fails because he reverted to artillery doctrine, thought like a conventional officer, ignored terrain reality. He became what he criticized, trusted doctrine over observation. "I forgot who I was," he says to Empty Room. July 26th, he calls new planning conference. "Gentlemen, we are changing the approach. Combined arms. Infantry moving through covered routes identified by terrain analysis. Artillery supporting, not leading. Armor integrated with infantry." His staff exchanges glances. This is not standard doctrine. "Sir," one officer ventures, "this is unconventional." So was climbing a cliff. Thornton's voice is quiet, but firm.
"Aguirre has cost us 100 casualties because I forgot the lesson Asaro taught. I forgot to think like a surveyor. That ends now." July 28th, Aguirre falls. Casualties are still significant, 40 more dead, 80 wounded, but lower than continued frontal assaults would have cost. Thornton walks through captured streets that evening, sees faces of men who died because he forgot his own lesson, because he chose doctrine over innovation, because he stopped being who he was and tried being someone conventional, the price of forgetting, but also the value of remembering.
August 17th, 1943. Sicily secured. Operation Husky ends. German forces evacuate across Strait of Messina to mainland Italy. Most escape. But Sicily is cleared. Strategic objectives achieved. Mediterranean shipping lanes reopened. Mussolini overthrown. Italy collapsing. 1st Canadian Division's Butcher Bill. 562 killed. 1,664 wounded. 84 captured. Thornton attends memorial service in temporary cemetery. 562 wooden crosses in neat rows. 562 names. He finds Hayes' marker, Patterson's, the 17 from Asoro, hundreds more from other battles. Mathematics do not attend funerals. Calculations do not weep. Numbers do not feel guilt. But generals do. Thornton stands before Hayes' cross for 5 minutes. Says nothing. There are no words that make this acceptable. No combination of sounds that transforms death into meaning. Hayes confirmed the cliff was climbable, died doing what Thornton asked, and now lies in Sicilian soil because a surveyor believed mathematics more than caution. Thornton moves on, visits other graves, remembers faces, names, the cost of 38 days in Sicily. That night, he writes in his notebook, not calculations, not terrain analysis, just names. 562 of them, written carefully, preserved, so someone remembers. Meanwhile, German intelligence headquarters, Rome. Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Richter works late into evening. His desk is covered with reports from Sicily, after-action assessments, prisoner interrogations, field observations from Weber and other commanders. He is compiling comprehensive intelligence assessment on Canadian 1st Division. The report will distribute throughout Wehrmacht, will influence German defensive planning for remainder of the war. Richter writes carefully. His words matter. Enemy forces demonstrated tactical sophistication unexpected for unit with no combat record. Good soldier material. He pauses, considers phrasing, continues. English and Canadians harder in attack than Americans. In general, fieldcraft superior to our own troops. Superior to our own troops. Bold claim, but accurate. Richter has documentation. Weber's reports on Asaro, multiple accounts of Canadian night infiltration, terrain exploitation that matched or exceeded Wehrmacht capabilities, very mobile at night, surprise break-ins, clever infiltrations with small groups between our strong points. In these capabilities, superior to our own troops. He details Asoro operations specifically, the night climb, the tactical surprise, the perfect integration of terrain analysis with combat operation. Enemy command demonstrated sophisticated understanding of terrain exploitation, civilian surveying expertise applied to military problem with devastating effect. Enemy general reportedly civilian surveyor before war. This background provided tactical advantages in mountain warfare. Richter adds recommendation. Future defensive positions
must account for unconventional Canadian approaches. Do not assume terrain is impassable. These troops are called mountain boys and will exploit terrain traditional doctrine considers unusable. Recommend doubled sentries in areas deemed impassable.
Recommend assuming Canadians will attempt what we believe impossible. He signs the report, dates it August 19th, 1943, sends it up chain of command. The assessment reaches Berlin within days. Copies distribute to every Wehrmacht unit in Mediterranean theatre. When German commanders prepare defensive positions in Italy, they brief their men specifically about Canadian tactics. Expect night infiltration. Expect unconventional approaches. Expect troops who think differently. The mountain boys have earned German respect. 3 words that will follow them through Italy, through Normandy, through Northwest Europe. 3 words written in blood and confirmed by enemy intelligence. Superior in fieldcraft.
40 years pass. The world changes. Wars end and begin. Empires fall. New nations rise. Men who fought in Sicily grow old. Most die. Some survive carrying memories too heavy for words. 1983. Sicily. 40th anniversary commemoration. Marcus Thornton is 79 years old. White hair, stooped shoulders, hands marked with age spots but still steady. Still capable of holding surveying transit or calculating grades through impossible terrain. He travels to Sicily for memorial ceremony. Canadian government invited all surviving veterans. Few remain. Most died in intervening decades. Thornton walks through cemetery where 562 crosses stood 40 years ago, now replaced with permanent markers. White stone, names engraved. He finds Hayes' marker, kneels with difficulty, arthritic knees protesting, places hand on stone. "You were right," he says quietly. "The cliff was climbable. You confirmed it. We finished it." He stands, moves to next marker. Patterson's,
The intelligence officer who died with Hayes. Then the 17 from Asoro. Names he remembers though faces have faded. Young men who died, proving mathematics correct. "General Thornton?" He turns. An old man approaches, 87 years old, moving carefully with cane, German accent. "My name is Klaus Richter. I was intelligence officer in Sicily. I wrote reports about your division." Thornton studies him. Old enemy, old professional. "You wrote that we were superior in fieldcraft." "Because you were." Richter gestures at Graves. "Are you the surveyor? The one who calculated the Asoro cliff was climbable?" "I am." Richter nods slowly. They stand together among the dead. 2 old men who spent 1943 trying to kill each other's soldiers, now just survivors remembering. "Your reports made German troops fight us harder," Thornton says. "More men died because you gave us that reputation. Germans killed Canadian prisoners because they feared what we could do." "Yes,"
Richter's voice is steady. "And also my reports made German commanders cautious, made them respect you, made them plan carefully when facing Canadians, which saved some of your men's lives even as it cost others." "Mathematics of warfare," Thornton says bitterly. "Save some by spending others." "Would you prefer I lied?" Richter meets his eyes. "Your soldiers earned respect through excellence. Should I have written that they were mediocre? Would that have saved lives?" Thornton has no answer. They are both right, both wrong. War is not equations, cannot be calculated. "How did you know the cliff was climbable?" Richter asks. "I surveyed steeper cliffs in British Columbia before the war, calculated slope angles and handhold spacing. The mathematics said it was possible." "And Captain Hayes, the one who died during reconnaissance?" "Died confirming my calculations." Thornton looks at Hayes's grave marker. "Hit by 88 millimeters during observation. Killed instantly." "I am sorry." But his death was not because your mathematics were wrong. It was because war is random, cruel, beyond calculation.
Thornton shakes his head. "I ordered him to confirm what I already believed. If I had trusted my calculations without confirmation, he would have lived. Or the climb would have failed and 200 men would have died." Richter gestures at cemetery. "We cannot know alternative histories. cannot calculate what might have been. They are silent for long moment. Around them, other veterans walk among graves, old men remembering youth, remembering friends who stayed here when they left. I also made mistakes, Richter says quietly. Agira. I read reports of that battle. Your initial attacks failed because you reverted to conventional doctrine. Many Canadians died. Thornton closes his eyes. I forgot who I was, forgot the lesson Asoro taught, thought like artillery officer instead of surveyor, cost me 100 casualties before I remembered.
Then you are human, like all of us.
Richter pauses. I wrote what I observed. Canadian soldiers fought with sophistication that surprised us. Night operations, terrain exploitation, tactical creativity. That was truth, worth noting, worth respecting. Worth killing for, Thornton says, respect bought with blood. Yes, Richter looks at graves, but also worth learning from. After Sicily, Wehrmacht changed defensive doctrine. Your unconventional thinking influenced our thinking, made both sides better, more professional. That has value. Thornton looks at the old German officer, sees professional respect, sees shared understanding of what command costs, sees another man who carries weight of decisions made 40 years ago. Your reports followed us through Italy, Thornton says, through Normandy. Every German unit we faced knew our reputation, expected us to do impossible things. And did you? Sometimes, when we remembered to think differently,
When we trusted civilian expertise over military doctrine.
Thornton pauses. Other times we forgot, became conventional, paid the price. Richter nods. That is warfare. Chaos with occasional patterns. We calculate, we plan, we try to predict, and then randomness decides who lives and dies. They stand together as sun sets over Sicily. 40 years since young men climbed cliffs and died in streets and earned reputations written in blood. I am sorry your men died well, Thornton finally says. I am sorry yours did, but I'm not sorry I told truth about their excellence. Richter extends his hand. You taught me something, General, about thinking differently, about civilian expertise having military value, about never assuming terrain is impossible. Thornton shakes his hand. Two old men, former enemies, now just soldiers who understand what command costs. And you taught me something, Thornton says, about respecting enemy excellence, about learning from opponents,
About honesty in assessment, even when it complicates your mission.
They stand together until darkness falls, then part, each returning to separate hotels, separate lives. They will not meet again, both know it, both accept it. After Richter leaves, Thornton remains among graves until stars appear. He thinks about Hayes, about 562 names, about mathematics that saved lives and arrogance that spent them. He is surveyor who tried to calculate warfare, who succeeded sometimes, failed sometimes, who learned that human beings are not terrain to be mapped, not numbers to be calculated, but who also learned that innovation matters, that thinking differently saves lives, that civilian expertise has military value, that sometimes mathematics can reduce chaos just enough to matter.
15 years later, 1998, British Columbia.
Marcus Thornton dies in his sleep, age 94. In his home, surrounded by surveying equipment and faded war photographs. His wife Margaret finds him in the morning. Peaceful, no pain. The end every soldier hopes for. His obituary mentions civilian surveying career, mentions war service, mentions teaching at Staff College, does not detail Asoro, does not count cost of being right. His funeral is small. 3 children, 8 grandchildren. A handful of old veterans who remember Sicily. Most of his generation is gone. They bury him in cemetery overlooking mountains he surveyed as young man. The mountains where he learned to see terrain differently, where he learned to calculate what others considered impossible. His gravestone is simple granite, engraved with words his children chose. Marcus Thornton, 1904 to 1998, surveyor, soldier. He saw mountains differently. That is enough. That is true.
In Germany, Klaus Richter died 5 years earlier.
1993, age 97. His reports remain filed in Bundesarchiv, Researchers occasionally find them. Note unusual phrase, superior in fieldcraft. Wonder what it meant. The reports are there. The graves are there. The cliff is still there in Sicily, unchanged by decades. And the lesson remains: think differently. Trust your expertise. Apply unique perspective to problems others cannot solve. And understand that price of being right is carrying weight of those who died, proving you correct. 562 crosses in Sicily, each one calculation that became flesh and blood and memory. Each one reminder that mathematics do not climb cliffs, men do. And that makes all the difference.